This is a wake-up call to media's influence and how this affects Tesla. Misinformation is damaging Tesla's brand, and lies are being fed into the brains of the unsuspecting public, and Elon Musk has been dragged from hero to villain at ludicrous speed. How has this happened? How is it that so many people are easily brainwashed into believing lies, and what can be done about it? Well, what an incredible example of lying through your teeth despite zero evidence we have for you today. The world's richest man, if you didn't already know, owns Twitter. But last week he also well and truly owned the BBC's James Clayton. James Clayton is a BBC News North American tech reporter who was gloriously exposed lying to Elon Musk's face about his experience of hate speech on Twitter. If you haven't seen this 2-minute clip yet, where have you been?
Give us more.
And I'm saying...
Then I say, sir, that you don't know what you're talking about.
Really?
Yes, because you can't see a single example of hateful content, not even one tweet. And yet you claim the hateful content was not.
What?
That's a false.
No, what I claimed what I claimed was...
That's not the right one, this one.
Particularly around hate speech in the company. Is that
what hate
that
speech are you talking about? I mean, you use Twitter.
Right.
Do you see a rise in hate speech?
I mean,
just a personal anecdote. Like, what do you? I don't.
Personally, my for you, I would see I get more of that kind of content. Yeah, personally, but I'm not going to talk to the rest of for the rest of Twitter.
So you see more hate speech personally?
I would say I would see more hateful content in that.
Content you don't like or hateful? What do you mean to describe a hateful thing?
Yeah, I mean, just content that will solicit a reaction, something that may include something that is slightly racist or slightly sexist, those kinds of things.
So you think if something is slightly sexist, it should be banned?
No,
is that what you're saying?
I'm not saying anything. I'm saying.
Well, I'm just curious. I'm trying to understand what you mean by hateful content, and I'm asking for specific examples. And you just said that if something is slightly sexist, that's hateful content. Does that mean that it should be banned?
Well, you've asked me whether my feed, whether it's got less or more. I'd say it's got slightly more.
That's why I'm asking for examples. Can you name one example?
I honestly don't use. Honestly, I
you
don't.
can't name a single example.
I'll tell you why. Because I don't actually use that for you feed anymore. Because I just don't particularly like it.
But you said
actually, a lot of people are quite similar. I only look at
hang on a second. You said you've seen
following.
more hateful content, but you can't name a single example, not even one.
I'm not sure I've used that feed for the last 3 or 4 weeks. And
then how did you see the hateful content?
Because I've been using Twitter since you've taken it over for the last 6 months.
Okay, so then you must have at some point seen for you hateful content. I'm asking for one example.
Right.
And you can't give a single one.
And I'm saying...
Then I say, sir, that you don't know what you're talking about.
Really?
Yes, because you can't give me a single example of hateful content, not even one tweet. And yet you claimed that the hateful content was high.
Well...
That's a false.
No, what I claimed...
You just lied.
What I claimed was... there are many organizations that say that kind of information is on the rise. Now, whether it has on my feed or not, I mean, right, and
literally
you can look at something
one.
like the Strategic Dialogue Institute in the UK. They will say that. So
look, people will say all sorts of nonsense. I'm literally asking for a single example, and you can't name one.
Right, and as I've already said, I don't use that feed. But
then how would you know that?
I don't think this is getting anywhere.
You literally said you experienced more hateful content, and then couldn't name a single example.
Right, and as I said,
that's absurd.
I haven't actually looked at that feed.
Then how would you know there's hateful content?
Because I'm saying that's what I saw a few weeks ago. I can't give you an exact example. Let's move on. We only have a certain amount of time.
Wow.
COVID misinformation. You changed the COVID misinformation.
Has
rules.
BBC changed its COVID misinformation?
The BBC does not set the rules on Twitter, so I'm asking you.
No, I'm talking about the BBC's misinformation about COVID.
I'm literally asking you about, you changed the labels, the COVID misinformation labels. There used to be a policy, it then disappeared. Why do that?
Well, COVID is no longer an issue. Does the BBC hold itself at all responsible for misinformation regarding masking and side effects of vaccinations, and not reporting on that at all? And what about the fact that the BBC was put under pressure by the British government to change its editorial policy? Are you aware of that?
This is not an interview about the BBC.
Oh, you thought it wasn't?
I see now why you've done Twitter Spaces. I am not a representative of the BBC's editorial policy. I want to make that clear. Let's talk about something else.
And after an hour, James Clayton decided he'd run out of questions and left the interview. Elon then carried on answering people's questions on the Twitter Spaces live broadcast. I'm embarrassed for British journalism. James Clayton had no respect for the world's smartest man who was sat in front of him. Do you think that the great Jeremy Paxman or other notorious interviewers would have been so utterly unprepared that they might have ran out of questions and left the interview early as James Clayton did? What? A man whose hourly worth is around $1.75 million, of which you have just wasted that time and opportunity by leaving the interview? So not only no evidence to back up your claim of increased hate speech on Twitter, but no more questions. How about the Twitter files that have been released, exposing corruption at the highest level, government and tech companies' collusion to suppress free speech? What about asking about Starship that's due to launch this week, the very spaceship that will be carrying the human race to Mars someday? How about a question to do with transition in the world to an electric economy future? Or about Tesla's world domination? Or the full self-driving improvements that are allowing countless Tesla owners to drive intervention-free right now across America? What about Elon's self-confessed concerns about the threat of artificial intelligence running away with itself? You know, and accidentally ending our species. You think that a tech reporter might have a sliver of interest in that conversation? How about asking how it is that Twitter is more successful after firing most of its staff and financially looking to be at break-even point this year already? But no, ran out of questions to ask the world's most interesting man. All done here, I'm off for a nice cup of tea. Oh, I wonder what the internet are thinking of this interview. Ah! Elon, from hero to villain. Some years ago, Elon Musk went from hero to villain overnight. Why is that? Is it because he's honest, speaks his mind, and does not censor himself for fear of offending people? Is it because he cannot be cancelled or lose his job in the same way that most people would if they accidentally shared an opinion that does not 100% go along with the company's view or the current narrative of what everybody is told to think? Elon has the courage and the capabilities to speak truth to power. And that is why he went from hero to villain. As the world's media and political parties turned against him, they could not identify him as one of their own, a Republican or a Democrat, politically leaning left or right, much like the way that the American media turned on Joe Rogan, the world's most popular podcaster, whose crime only appears to be questioning authority. How dare you? Put simply, Elon is a threat. He's a threat to politics. He's a threat to media organisations, car companies, oil companies, tech companies, everybody that wants to maintain the status quo. The corporate media are clueless. Why has this happened? With more people tuning into Joe Rogan's podcast than tuning into Fox News or CNN, the corporate media are dying. They have lost grip on the conversation and have been exposed to be corrupt, pushing false narratives and clinging onto their audience with clickbait, fear-mongering headlines, 24-hour breaking news, all in the hope that they can keep people's attention with a stream of constant terror and sowing division and hate. They know that they are literally dying for attention, so to push the story, the narrative that Joe Rogan is bad, Elon Musk is bad, all protesters are bad, anyone who questions our motives is bad. Well, what do you do about problem people such as those? Keep throwing enough shit at them until some of it sticks. Blame them for being billionaires. Blame them for saying mean things that just so happen to be true. Blame them for allowing hateful content on Twitter. Oh wait, that's the point, isn't it? The hateful cesspit that was Twitter, under its previous woke ideology management, has now gone and magically transformed into a much better place to communicate in. How strange. James Clayton's response exposes the echo chamber that the liberal left are living in. He was pushing the narrative that hate speech is taking over Twitter, despite the exact opposite to be true. Other false narratives include that Elon Musk is far right-wing politically, and that he's a greedy, self-serving, big bad billionaire. All total nonsense, apart from actually being a multi-billionaire, of course. When asked to give facts and evidence when claiming hate speech is on the rise at Twitter, James Clayton's possibly unknown to him groupthink bias was challenged beautifully. Elon is a very clear thinker, and he dismantled, exposed James Clayton to show that he hadn't even questioned his own position on the matter, to see if what he believed was actually true or not. It reminded me of two things: the Jordan Peterson and Kathy Newman interview.
You're exercising your freedom of speech to certainly risk offending me, and that's fine. I think more power to you, as far as I'm concerned.
So you haven't sat there and I'm just trying to work that out. I mean,
Hello, darkness, my old friend.
Gotcha.
you have got me. You have got me. I'm trying to work
about
that through in
time.
my head. Yeah, it took a while.
And for the first time, I heard echoes of Christopher Hitchens in Elon's response, who would dismantle his religious opponent's views with such ease and competency. It was always a pleasure to watch. I sincerely hope we see more of this from Elon. If this video is doing anything for you whatsoever, please do hit the like button as it helps show it to more people. Thanks so much. BBC, when groupthink meets reality. Thankfully, the interview was also broadcast on Twitter Spaces. Had it have not, the BBC might well have edited the interview to make themselves look a bit better. Oh, hang on a minute, they actually did that as well. The BBC edited the video to make themselves look better. You couldn't make this up. Media companies have a narrative, an agenda to push, and the BBC clearly messed up when trying to tell Elon that hate speech is on the rise on Twitter. I assume that James Clayton thought he might well catch Elon with a gotcha moment himself, but unfortunately for him, it backfired and exposed his ignorance on the subject. Will the BBC change its opinion, or just double down on its hate speech disinformation? And also, will James Clayton hold up his hands and admit that he was totally and utterly wrong, and learn from his mistakes? That would at least go towards helping regain some credibility. My Twitter experience. Personally, I've seen a massive improvement on Twitter since Elon Musk took over. The bots have all but disappeared, which were just fake accounts trying to scam people or disrupt any decent conversations on it, and it gives me at least interesting, relevant content on my feed. How this affects Tesla. As a self-confessed Tesla addict, and let's be honest, as Elon fanboy, I've paid a lot of attention to what both have been up to over the past decade, and I've kept relatively up to date with news stories, data, statistics, business growth, product development, profitability, and perhaps might have at least a slightly good understanding of the immense benefit to society, and indeed the world, Tesla and Elon Musk are having. Despite this, let's call it evidence, I hear so many nonsensical, idiotic, unsubstantiated claims about Tesla and Elon Musk every time I peruse social media or talk to people who are not familiar with the subjects. What I do hear is a regurgitated narrative that is rammed down the throats of unsuspected readers of daily headlines about the big bad billionaire himself Elon Musk, and factually untrue, outright lies about Tesla cars, everything from they are unsafe, despite being statistically the safest cars ever tested, to they are more damaging to the environment than internal combustion engine cars, again totally debunked long ago with evidence to back that up. Now, whether that's just a lack of time people have to actually look into things themselves, or just that people seem to think they need to share any old opinion on subjects they know nothing about, it's now reaching such a sickening point that even supposed respected journalists are utterly baffled at being called out on their incorrectly installed beliefs and cannot offer a shred of evidence to back up their claims. Now, why would anybody want to stand in the way of Twitter's free speech and fact-checking solution, or Tesla's mission of transitioning the world to sustainable energy, or Elon's views on why it might be a good idea to speak the truth and fact-check things like, I don't know, the BBC or Joe Biden's false tweets? Why would someone like the President of the United States need fact-checking at all? Surely he only ever speaks the truth.
I can remember your dramatic announcement that by 2035, GM would be 100% electric. You changed the whole story, Mary, wherever you are. There you are. You did, Mary. You electrified the entire automobile industry. I'm serious. You led, and it matters.
If you didn't know what that was the disgusting moment that the President of the United States, Joe Biden, gave all the credit of electric car adoption to General Motors CEO Mary Barra, whilst continuing to ignore Elon Musk, and at that time had never said the word Tesla in public. Despite Tesla being the most successful American car company since Ford, delivering millions of electric vehicles worldwide in contrast to GM's pathetic EV offerings at the time. And clearly, backed up with data, Tesla are the world industry leaders by a long distance. Yet here was Joe Biden ignoring, snubbing and discrediting Tesla in public, whilst glorifying the union workers of GM, who just so happen to be large political donors to the Democratic Party. Fancy that. Why mass media hate? Why would it be that mass media corporations might be against Elon and Twitter's push for free speech and general goal of truth and transparency? Could it be that the dying media, which is continually fueled by pushing division, hate, negativity and drama down the throats of everyone, might stand to lose their audience if they cannot convince the general public that impending doom is always around the corner? In the media's eyes, our society needs to be kept in fear of one another, with a division of red versus blue, rich versus poor, red versus white wine, whatever, so long as we don't all wake up, come together and realise we are all the same. We each have goals and ambitions and want to bring our children into a caring, future-proof world free from violence and danger. Oh my God, what if John Lennon was right and love really is the answer? Is it finally time to give peace a chance and come together? Those Beatles really did have a good point, didn't they? What can be done about the lies? Question everything. In an ideal world, media organisations would be totally unbiased and give nothing but evidence and facts rather than pushing narratives and opinions. However, don't expect to find that anywhere other than on Twitter from now on, somewhere that upholds the idea of fact-checking, free speech and truth to be above all else. The sooner the public realise that what they are being told from the media is somebody's opinion, not facts, the sooner people will realise to question everything. You cannot trust the media to tell you the truth. And believe me, as I've followed Tesla's story for such a long time, the vast majority of stories I see about it are incorrect. They're just lies. What's a subject that you know a lot about? Do you see incorrect information being pushed as truth in the media? If we find ourselves to be wrong on a subject, we should be humble enough to admit it and correct course. We should all be standing up for what is true in the world. And in the words of a man who dedicated his life to the truth, a true journalist and author who stood up to bullying, authoritarian powers and corruption, let me end with a quote from the great Christopher Hitchens. Take the risk of thinking for yourself. Far more happiness, truth, beauty and wisdom will come to you that way. Don't forget that these are all just, ironically, my ideas and opinions, and I too may be wrong. Let me know what you think in the comments below. What did you think of the interview? Will Tesla and Elon continue to suffer undeserved hate long into the future? Will the BBC ever return to being unbiased? I'm Will, this is the Tesla Jigsaw. Thanks so much for watching.